Welcome to the next episode of the Blake Talks Good podcast. I'm your host, Blake Jennings, the founder of OnRamp, a nonprofit that shares the grace of God by gifting reliable vehicles to hardworking people in need to help them on the road to self-sufficiency. Well, today's episode is going to begin with a confession about OnRamp. We've given away a lot of vehicles, and most of the time, the gift of those vehicles to the clients that we serve has worked wonderfully. It has empowered them to get better jobs, get their kids to school, get on the transplant list, get healthy, buy a home, all sorts of wonderful outcomes. But here's the confession. Occasionally, it has not gone well. We have had a few clients who we gifted a vehicle, and then that vehicle enabled them to do something that was destructive to them or to their families. We hate seeing that. Everyone hates seeing that kind of thing happen. You did something good. You meant for it to have a good outcome, but it didn't. Well, that is yet another illustration of a law in our universe that I want to talk about today. It is the law of unintended consequences. The law of unintended consequences, I'll try to define it as easily as I can. It basically is a law that states that humans are limited in their ability to foresee the future consequences of their actions. It means that we cannot predict everything that will come from the choices that we make today. We hope that those choices will result in good, but sometimes they won't. Sometimes they will have unintended consequences that don't work out the way we expect. It could be the good side. They work out better than we expected, but often it's the other side. They work out negatively. They have even sometimes the opposite effect from what we expected. I'll give you a classic example that we see frequently here in the United States, policy around forest fires. So for decades, the policy of the government around forest fires was you should put all fires out. So if a fire flares up, you put it out. You suppress all fires. What was the unintended consequence? Well, that allowed all this undergrowth and dead brush to build up on the floors of our forests until it eventually lit with such ferocity that the fire couldn't be put out. And so that led to this unintended consequence. You actually had more damage to our forest than if you would have allowed smaller burns over time. There's a million examples of that, particularly obviously in the world of government where they're trying to make decisions that affect massive areas that are super complex and they just can't imagine all the things that could come of it. But it happens in the world of business, it happens in the world of church and charity, and it happens in our own families, our own lives. It happens in technology frequently. We have some new invention, some new technological change, and everybody expects it to have these great results, all these positive benefits, but we do not predict the negatives that it will bring. Classic example, social media. 10, 15 years ago when social media was like a new thing, you had so many people who had so much money behind it, so much energy behind it, talk about all the good it will bring. It'll bring connections and relationships and freedom and economic growth and all of these wonderful things. And yes, some of those have come true. Social media is not all negative. Some of those really good things have come true, but they didn't predict a lot of the bad, at least as far as I know of. I didn't see a lot of people talking about how it would create addiction and loneliness and polarization and radicalization and lead to violence and all of these things that we've seen coming out of social media that were negative unintended consequences. I see a lot of that same discussion going on around AI right now. I was actually at a conference this week and AI was one of the big topics, and there were a lot of people on stage that have a lot of money and a lot of interest behind AI growing. They want it to grow. And so they had a lot of rosy things to say about AI, all the good that it will bring. And I don't doubt there will be a lot of good things that will come from AI, particularly in fields like medicine and medical research and all sorts of things that it will do that are good. However, there wasn't a lot of discussion of the downside. And I think we can already predict some of that downside, but I think there's going to be a lot of unintended negative consequences that we don't even know yet. We can't even imagine yet that could come out of AI. Now, my point in bringing up these unintended consequences, this law that permeates all of human existence, isn't to get in a debate about whether we should or shouldn't do something. That's pointless. We're not going to discuss the merits of AI. Should you have AI or not? Doesn't matter. It's coming. Social media, it's here. And I don't think most of us are deciding policies around forest fires. Like, that's not the point of this. Things are going to happen. Decisions are going to be made, and there will be unintended consequences, even from very good intentions. There will be consequences that will come in the future that will be negative. That's just a reality because we're human. We're limited. We cannot predict the future perfectly. What I want to do instead is I want to talk about how we, as people who want to do good in the world, we want to make the world a better place, whether that's coming out of a Christian or religious motivation or just a human motivation. We want to somehow do good in the world. The point of this podcast is to help you do good better, to help you have a greater impact in the world. I want to talk about how we can think about the law of unintended consequences and orient our lives around the goal of minimizing the damage of unintended consequences. I think that's part of what we are called to do in the world. You're going to see big governments and businesses and organizations make decisions around what works best for the common good. And typically they're going to be pursuing technological growth and economic growth and all these big things. But the decisions that they make are going to have unintended consequences that are going to hurt real people. And I think that that is where we can uniquely step in. And we can help alleviate the damage that comes from unintended consequences. So I'll give you an example from this AI question that we're all struggling with. I think I may do a whole episode on the coming AI Armageddon and talk about that. I'm not super negative on it, but I think it'll be a fascinating conversation. Maybe we'll do that in a coming week. For now, all I want to say is there are going to be, without doubt, there already have been some unintended consequences. Maybe some people intended them, but some negative consequences from the growth of AI. An example would be the loss of some really significant jobs. An example would be graphic design. An example would be administrative assistants. An example would be programming. Let's talk about programmers. I mean, it used to be 10, 20 years ago, every parent was telling their kids, become a computer programmer. Great job security, great income. You'll be at the leading edge. Yeah, guess what? Now, Claude AI can write HTML code better than anybody I know. AI can program at a faster rate, more accurately than humans can. And so you end up where you have people who are in computer programming at the highest level. They still have their jobs because they're directing all these AIs, but the entry-level jobs are drying up. They're going away because AI can do it better. So what you're seeing is the evaporation of whole career tracks. People are losing the jobs that they went to college for, that they trained for. That is a very real problem. And again, I'm not here to say whether we should have AI or not. It's not my decision. It is here. It is coming. So more it's about what can we do? And I think what we, as people who want to do good in the world, what we can do is dedicate ourselves to ask. With any major change, any major policy, any major technological innovation that comes in our culture, who are going to be the people that lose out, that hurt, that we can help? What are going to be the unintended negative consequences that we can step into and help alleviate? So I think, personally, I'll just give one example from this AI thing. I think that nonprofits and churches have an amazing opportunity in the next 10 years to step into the space of job retraining and upskilling. If you want to build relationships with people and love on them and help them and care for them, this is a beautiful place for churches and charities to step in and help people who spent their whole career training for something, learning something that now is gone. It's done. It's done by AI better than they ever will. Now they're up a creek. They're in real trouble. You can come alongside and create whole new charities, whole new ministries designed around reskilling people to find new work in this AI economy. It's one example, one small example. I think that there are so many cases where people are harmed by unintended consequences and there's nobody looking out for them because they're the minority. Most people are helped by these new things, these big things, but there's some small group that's hurt. They need somebody to come alongside, not for the sake of profit, but for the sake of helping, of wanting to love them. I'll give you another example from our town. So we live in a college town, and a very good thing. I'm putting air quotes, good thing. It is good, but I think it's viewed maybe naively as just good. Just good. It's the growth of our university. So our local university Texas A&M. It's a massive, like 80,000 something students going to that place. It has continued to grow every year by somewhere around 1,800 students. And on the surface, that seems good. More students entering college. The university's growing. You need more professors. That's more jobs, more staff. That's more jobs. It seems great on the surface. What's the unintended consequence? All of these new people moving to town exceeds the rate of building homes. The result is that people are being priced out of homes, whether to own or to rent. Local people, families who aren't college educated in particular. So a lot of the people who have been able to live in this town on a blue collar salary, a service industry salary, no longer can. They're losing their homes. That was never A&M's intention. I do not believe the university decided, let's make homeless people who are in the service industry in this town. No one would do that. What they did is something that on the surface was good. It was good for the large group of people, but they did not anticipate the downstream damage that would cause upon a vulnerable set of people. And so should A&M fix that? I'd love them to, but that's not really what universities do. I think this is where churches and charities can step up and say, we see this thing that on its surface was good, A&M growing, accepting more students who can get a degree. We see that though it was intended for good, it has had negative unintended consequences that have harmed a real set of people, a vulnerable set of people in our community. Let's step in and help that group of people. I do think that this is something that free market capitalism doesn't tend to do well on its own. This is really where charities and churches can fill a vital role in our economy. Free market capitalism is going to focus on the big pie, on where the money can really be made. Yeah, that's what it's going to do. That's going to leave some hurting people, some victims who we can come alongside. They've been harmed by this large scale decision that was made. Let's come alongside and not worry about profiting off of them. Let's figure out, how do we help them? How do we help them to grow in self-sufficiency, grow in income, grow in their ability to get a home? How do we come alongside them and help them? There are so many opportunities in this world and life in general to step in and assist those individuals and groups who have been harmed by unintended consequences in our world. On-ramp actually exists to some extent for that reason. What is the unintended consequence? I don't want to get political here, so I'm not trying to make a political point one way or another. I'm just pointing out some realities. There was a program called Cash for Clunkers. It had merits. It was decided by people. I'm not one of them. It happened. So we're not going to debate the pros and cons of it. I don't want to do that. Instead, I want to discuss unintended consequences. That program took many used cars off of our roads. What was the result? Prices for used cars went up, supply went down. Now we live in a reality where used cars that used to be affordable, you could keep them on the road, keep driving them. Now they are hard to find. Families can't afford them, and so on-ramp needs to step in. Another classic example, regulation around crash safety. This is a good thing. We want our cars to be safer, right? Of course we do. And so we regulate and we decide we want all these sensors on them to protect from accidents, and we want all this engineering and design to go in to make them as safe as possible. That's wonderful. The problem is it drives up the price. And the more sensors you put in them, the more you're going to have to spend on repairs in the future. You get into a fender bender. Now all those sensors have to be aligned. The result, well, it hurts people who were depending on affordable used cars 10 to 15 years into that car's life cycle. They're not available anymore. Those cars don't exist because they're too complicated. They're too technologically sophisticated. They're too expensive to maintain. So again, these were decisions made by people way above my pay grade that were motivated by good reasons. I'm not trying to debate the decision. What I'm saying is there were unintended consequences that have left a vulnerable group in harm's way. And that's an opportunity for us as individuals, as churches, as charities that want to do good in the world. We have an opportunity to do that. If you want to know, where can I do good in the world? Look for the people that are being harmed by unintended consequences, that are falling prey to something that was never meant to hurt them. It was meant to do good in the world, and yet there is always a group of people, there is some harm that is done, because we as humans, we cannot predict all outcomes of the decisions that we make. So I did not mean for this podcast episode to be depressing. I hope it is not. It's probably, if you're old enough, you know, this is just the world we live in. Everything that you intend for good, there's going to be some negatives that come out of it. It just does, because we can't predict the future completely, perfectly. That's painful, and yet it also creates amazing opportunity. There are some of you listening to this that will be the innovators who come up with ways to step into unintended consequence problems like the affordable housing crisis in our college town and come up with an amazing way to solve that for people who are vulnerable, who are left out on the edges, on the margins. And I hope this podcast will inspire you. That is good work. That is Jesus-honoring work, to look in your community and ask who has been harmed by things that were decided for the majority that make sense. They were logical, and yet there were unintended consequences that hurt this group. Who can step in and come up with creative solutions to meet those needs? So I hope this inspires you to go come up with some creative solutions to keep your eyes open for those who are vulnerable or harmed by unintended consequences. I hope you will get to work helping those in need. This has been another episode of Blake Talks Good. I look forward to our next conversation. If you have a question that you would like covered on Blake Talks Good, you can email it to blakej@onramptx.org. Again, that's BLAKEJ@ONRAMPTX.org. We'd love to have your questions, whether they're about individually doing good or working at a nonprofit or ministering in a church, wherever you might be. If you want to maximize the good that you do in your community and have a question, please send it to us.